So I'll just say a little greeting to all the listeners of the podcast, and I'd like to introduce my guest, Tracey. And I actually don't know how to pronounce your surname, Tracey. How do you say the surname?
It's Scottish and it's Hoolachan. So it's a
Hoolachan.
silent H.
So Tracey
Hoolachan.
Hoolachan. For my listeners, I'll really be keen to let her flesh out her identity. But from my experience, I've done political campaigning with her. She and I were promoting bodily autonomy and human liberty and dignity during the COVID days. I discovered in her a light, a joy and intelligence and tenacity for truth, which is truly rare. And as we will see in the chat, Tracey is a winner when it comes to progress for the small person and the battler against the colossal forces out there, government, corporations, etc. So a warm welcome to you, Tracey, to the podcast.
Thank you, and what a lovely welcome.
So we're chatting via phone for the listeners. So just to flesh out the scene for them, I'm here in Toowoomba, where you and I first got to know each other. But what about you today? Where are you? Could you just describe your setting, or if there's anything special about where you are today?
Okay, I'm in Cooper PD, in the Red Centre, and I was sort of drawn here from, I think really God gave me that push.
Yeah.
But I'm in Cooper PD. I'm sat in my wheelchair because I'm a wheelie. And I'm currently in the middle of what looks like a demolition yard because I'm actually working on restoring a house that I bought on the internet. So hence the reason I've not gone for a live podcast.
Yes, understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a setting for me to imagine. You in your wheelchair in Cooper PD, working on a house that resembles a demolition zone. So there you go. That's quite a setting.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that because I'm not a young chuck, as you know, David.
Yeah.
I think it's important that your life doesn't stop when you get to a certain age.
Yeah.
But that what keeps you younger is stretching the boundaries of what you can do.
Nicely said.
And doing my own renos and restoring a house myself from the wheelchair is really stretching them boundaries sometimes.
Well, I'm sure everyone listening can detect that it's that energy and life in your voice, which is so effervescent and a blessing to hear. You and I actually, back in the day, we were on the streets together doing activism during the heady COVID years.
Yes, well, I remember it well, David. We were trying to. I spotted you in one of the other groups promoting that you were trying to teach people the value of preferential voting.
Yeah.
And, that to me is where people are really, falling behind in Australia. That we've been sort of like programmed to think about having only two parties and two choices, and that mentality has to be drummed out of everybody. We need to be putting those parties as low down on our ballot papers as we can.
Yeah.
And using preferential voting so that we get an independent representing us in all of our constituencies.
Yeah.
So it was a very good, I was more than happy to go out to bat for that one.
Yeah.
I think we also bumped into each other at a polling booth.
Yes.
When we were when you had all your little kiddies in tow, and we bumped into each other at a polling booth one time when we were handing out brochures
Yes.
for the minority parties and the independents that just don't have the volunteers and staff to assist them.
Yeah, that's right.
So, that was another good cause. I mean, unless, people start getting behind them, the minorities and the independent parties, then, and help supporting them, then democracy in Australia is literally dead from the start.
Yeah.
We've got to get up and, metaphorically stand up.
Yes.
Every way we can. And one of my favourite sayings is, it is the standard you walk past. And if you see it and it's not right, then you've got to stand up, speak out, and be an activist.
Yeah.
The days of being quiet Australians is gone.
Yes. So at that time, it was an interesting time of transition and change. When I say that, I think in terms of former political adversaries on the Liberal and Labor, they largely got forced together in some ways. People who were previously arguing about matters found themselves on the same side of the political against a common enemy, which was their bodily autonomy being removed, which was lockdowns, which was green ticks for entering places, coercion and jabs. So what was your sense of the community at that time and the impact of COVID, Tracey?
Well, I'd actually fell into COVID-19. As you'll have seen from my submissions, I spotted the hoax January 2020.
Yeah.
My background was as a deputy rescue leader for State Emergency Service in Queensland, but I also completed the Warden's Certificate, which was to run reconnaissance on any emergency. And I actually participated in a pandemic preparedness exercise that was held in Brisbane in the 1990s. So I knew what should have been happening, and I could see what wasn't happening. I moved from, I was still, in January 2020, I was still actively working on Robodebt. And I followed the same people that were ramping up all the, or we call it nudging up all of the Robodebt measures. I followed exactly the same people and the same patterns onto COVID-19. So instantly I could hear I was instantly alerted to the fact, in early January, right, that something wasn't right, just from the way that the nudges were coming out from the radio. I was waiting for it, and then I went looking into. I have a diploma of accounting, and I actually did the book budgeting and forecasting module, and I decided that I would model myself COVID-19, and I did a very quick one. And found instantly that it was not a threat at all.
the issue of nudging, the way it's an area of marketing really, which has been rebranded, and its incursion into the health space is a whole topic that maybe we can get into we will get to it. But before we get to that, because you go so deeply into that and you make so many great points about it in particularly your blog. I'll put a link to your blog for anyone who wants to engage with you more in the podcast notes. But
a good resource is if you look at the featured post, the welcome to members.
Yep.
Is to look at the Royal Commission submission I did for New Zealand.
Yep.
It is right down the bottom of the list. And in there you will see that Nudge had actually was actually a rebrand of behavioural economics.
Yeah.
And in fact, Nudge, it was trialled in health and failed in 2016. And this was covered by the Australian Productivity Commission. But the full history on that is in there.
Yeah.
The book Nudge, I think it was 2006. I might be wrong on that date. The full Nudge was actually written by Richard Thaler and Kaz Sunstein, and neither of those people have a any psychology qualifications.
Yes.
So, that is probably the most astounding thing, that everybody followed the nudge patterns, the psychology nudge patterns, and these people had no qualifications.
Yes, that's right. You make so many interesting points, which I'll go through as we get to it. I want to have a sense though of life on the ground at that time. You were in Toowoomba, and you were part of the Stand in the Park community. Is that right?
Yes, because I was part of Stand in the Park community, but I when there was initially about 6 of us, I think, when it started.
Yeah.
In Toowoomba, and it certainly grew. But I was there very early, and I continued, even though they moved to a coffee shop, I continued going to the park instead of a coffee shop, because I used the logic. And that was every Sunday.
Yeah.
I continued going to the park every Sunday, because my thoughts were the whole reason that we were taught to go to the park, right, was because the coffee shops were banning us.
Yeah.
And people would be able to go to any park across the world, look out for somebody with yellow on.
Yeah.
At that time in the day, and they would have local information on the ground.
Mm.
And so I continued going to the park, and yes, I was part of that community, but I'd already talked into, before that, I'd already lodged things to Senate and done an incredible amount of research, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Because if you have a look at my Royal Commission submission to disability, and that submission was also checked over by Sanjeev Sablok.
Yes.
Who at one stage put it on his website.
Which is a very highly credible recommendation.
Very, very credible. So he actually, checked over and gave it a big thumbs up.
Yeah.
And
he was receiving national news. He was being interviewed. That was a big turning point for someone of his stature to take a stand.
Exactly. So, and that was how I spotted him in the news, because I thought, in fact, I approached a lot of people with that submission, right?
Yeah.
As when I could see people, I mean, if I could see people speaking out, then I sent them my submission to give them the proof behind
Yes.
what they were saying, so that they had at their fingertips the information proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that COVID-19 was a hoax.
Yes.
I mean, I screen captured them ramping up measures like even the toilet paper gate.
Yes.
All of that was screen captured and was submitted to the Senate, right, COVID Senate, in 27th of May 2020.
Yeah.
So they had that information that it was a hoax, including the people that were ramping it up. They had that information and it was at May 2020, and my submission was rejected after every single one of my medical findings, and everything was proved to be 100% correct.
Yes.
I estimated correctly what the threat would be, my estimate, and this was a budget forecast. My estimate was only submitted to Senate, was only 55 people per flu season. That was submitted to Senate 27th of May 2020. By October, when the figures from the Australian Bureau of Statistics came out for the period ending 31st of August, when I removed pneumonia and other factors like comorbidities, which rated about 13%, the figures wound back to there being a realistic figure, ignoring really ages of 43
Yes.
per flu season. And at that quantity, it was insufficient that any measures at all were taken. It would have been considered in prior years to be a minor threat.
Yeah, that's right. And so what I find interesting is that you were very well primed to objectively assess how the authorities were responding. And from that standpoint, because of your sensitivity based on your research and insights from the Robodebt that you'd been doing submissions for, as well as your experience as a rescue team leader and capacity to assess the data, you were seeing in real time that this is the data on the outbreak or the level of infection globally. This is the actual threat based on that data, and what would be a reasonable and best practice response. And so you were weighing them up, and it was pretty clear to you.
It was very clear, and the more that I've looked into, because bear in mind that the PCR test has now been found to be totally useless.
Yeah.
And the rats equally, right? The rats is only an indicative test, and when people got positive results from the rats, they were sending them for inspection and retesting, right? Because it is only an indicative test. They were sending them for a retest using a PCR.
That's the rapid antigen test.
Yes.
Rats.
So it, the rats was even more useless than the PCR was. The PCR was discredited by 2 courts, and Magufuli, actually, who was the president of Tanzania, had actually all the qualifications, scientific qualifications, and he, realised that the PCR tests were even giving positive readings for fruit juice.
Yes.
So anybody that had sipped of fruit juice, could have been COVID-19 positive. I watched in real time the government, the WHO, keep reducing down their measures, right, to make COVID-19 look worse than it was. And they kept, at one stage in the COVID-19 controversy, not conspiracy group, you'll see a banner heading that shows that, by the time I stopped tracking their measures down, literally, they were anybody that had a hangover could be diagnosed, clinically diagnosed as being COVID-19 positive.
Yes.
Literally a hangover. But they did a lot of things that were just absolutely bizarre.
So the big point, the big powerful point that I loved reading in one of your blog posts was the best practice in an emergency setting for a someone who's planning to respond to a pandemic, to do with messaging and calming the public. They did the exact opposite. They weren't showing any signs of positive results. Instead, they were amplifying the cases to create alarmism.
Yes, that's correct. And in fact, if you have a look at whose situation reports, 1 and 2, right? You can go further, but 1 and 2, just across those 2, right? And we can now say, right, from China's released information that the first sign of symptoms was 20th of December 2019 in their patient 2, who was noted as being the first COVID-19 death, but actually had cancer.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's a pretty significant, comorbidity.
Yeah.
But if you look at the WHO situation report, number 1, you will see that there were 6 deaths, and this is on the from Garter Talk on the 20th of January. So that's a full month after the first symptoms were acknowledged, right, on medical records.
Yeah.
So a full month from then, right, we have the 20th of September, 20th of January situation report showing only 6 deaths.
Yeah.
Now, this was China's cold and flu season when, bear in mind, no one was looking at ages, right? 6 deaths in a month in a cold and flu season.
Yeah.
Is just pathetic.
Yes.
And so we've got 6 deaths, but then you get to situation report number 2, you will see this is the following day based on the following data. You can see that by situation report number 2, they'd had 5 of the 6 case files to hand, and 4 of those 5, right, indicated that they had comorbidities. So So literally, by situation report number 2, they were saying there was one definite person, right, that died just of COVID-19, right, and there's one case file still outstanding.
Yeah.
So there was only 2 people, right, that possibly did not have comorbidities that contributed to their deaths.
Yeah.
And this was a month after the first COVID-19 symptoms.
Yeah. So.
Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so that data set could be harnessed in various directions. It could be harnessed to indicate to the world or any given populace that things are okay, things are fine. Or that data set could be used, and this is how it was used, to springboard to a mass emergency and sense of alarmism. And from what I gather in your reading your work, that's where the nudge came in. That's where there was an element of pre-planning, behavioral economics. They took this data set, which ordinarily, and there are historical epidemic responses they could have leaned on. They ignored that and instead used it to generate, amber and red alerts, and it went from there.
There was this was a disease that was influenza-like, and there has never ever been consensus on what an influenza pandemic looks like. But you can bet your bottom dollar, right, that in other pandemics, there are 4 key indicators. And one is transmission, and they never proved that, as I've just explained from the situation reports 1 and 2. They never proved there was any transmission. And in fact, by situation report 3, if you have a look at whose published date and the date of the data on each of these reports, you will notice that the first 2 days they had a publishing schedule 1 day behind the data, and on situation report number 3, that data was published supposedly on the same day. There is a whole day's worth of data that has gone missing, and I would put money on the fact that 1 day's data relates to the 22nd of January, and that it was disposed of because it showed that missing case file had turned up and that there was only 1 case of COVID-19 and it had not transmitted.
Yeah.
I've seen Pfizer admitting they never tested for transmission. I'm telling you beyond a shadow of a doubt, there was no transmission.
Yeah.
I can show from the WHO situation reports that go from and China's investigation reports that go from the 27th of December when there was 27th of December when the first 3 patients were admitted to hospital. I can show that these patients that went back from the 20th, right, were actually all linked to the market, the Wuhan market, and this was a market that had 10,000 people a day going through it.
Yeah.
And they were regulars.
Yeah.
So we're talking of potentially, this thing that was supposed to have surface life, and was supposedly a super spreader, had been in a market, right, from the 20th of December with symptoms, symptomatically within that market, through to the 27th with a potential transmission to 70,000 people, right, because of 10,000 a day times by 7 days is 70,000.
Yeah.
Right, so there was potentially 70,000 people, but by the 20th of January, there was only 1 death, right, that we can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, right, assuming that it had a correct PCR reading. There was only one death that was, and one death does not equal transmission.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So I don't believe that COVID-19 could possibly, because 70,000 people, we all saw those, those pictures that they spread it to 6 people and they spread it on to another 6 people. We all saw all of this, this forecasting.
Yeah.
It was just absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
It is impossible to globally, estimate, do estimates of data. Right? It's impossible to do, I've forgotten the word. It's impossible to, to plan out for equal spread on forecasting across the world, because only 10% of the world's population is in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, that's right.
So there is never going to be an equal rate of spread across the world. Right, so all of the methods that they used for modelling was all wrong. In fact, I pulled apart in my submission on the 27th of May. I pulled apart the modelling that was done by Doherty's, showing that the modelling was so poor that it wasn't, it wasn't correctly recording their estimated 56 deaths.
Yes.
In one section they had 56 deaths, in another section it was 52. So they, when you divided it between men and women.
Yeah.
So they couldn't even accurately model 56 people. But but Doherty's got used for just about everything. It's pretty clear why. Doherty's had a $3 million grant to promote vaccination.
Yes. So I'm interested to explore your case study a little bit with regard to because like I said, you were in real time there, objectively analysing things. You state plainly that you've historically been a swinging voter. You don't have any allegiances. You're not getting paid to do any of this. You were just observing things from your workplace experience as in accounting, and also in the team leader SES position. You were observing and commenting, and as you've just outlined, the data there was plain enough to easily to be interpreted by any clear thinking person that it's not an emergency. It's not a time to panic. Even if there are indicators of a novel virus, it's not. The data doesn't suggest in any way, shape, or form to panic, to lock down, to coerce, and so you were interpreting that data in real time, and yet you came to be have a special attention on you, and I think that comments on the state of democracy today, because people go online thinking, well, we can discuss things democratically. However, when you started commenting, you became the focus of what you've talked about, this nudge approach. And I think that can help people understand the true nature of dialogue and democracy in the world today. So what is your sense of truth tellers or people wanting to explore and discover things online in the Western democracies, for starters?
Okay, well, I actually submitted to, and this was before this under 16 and disinfo, rubbish. I submitted to the inquiry by e-safety that was at one stage publicly published.
Yep.
And I outed the Twitter files information.
Yeah.
Right? Literally about 10 months before it was made public.
Yes.
So they got that information that our elections are being interfered with. I've done, I've been literally ahead of the game all the way through this.
Yeah.
And I can prove that by my submissions.
Yes.
My intention, whilst I just want things to work.
Yes.
Right, and I always think that the best approach to get that, the best and quickest way to get that done is to put forward the information on what is going on to government. And that's first and foremost.
Yeah.
Right, so they get the submission, and then whilst I will, I say to people, you're welcome to follow along with me as I do my research. The government gets that information in submissions at a time that it could rectify its actions, right? And but unfortunately, Australia Parliament House, has clearly not been doing the right thing by Australians for a very, very long time. What's going on there is just absolutely shocking. We have Robodebt. Well, we started with Robodebt. A lot of people don't realise because it's been nudged as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realise that the government, 400,000 people were initially robbed, there's no other word to put it, using standover tactics supported by the Australian Federal Police, who were literally, sending text messages threatening to people to pay illegal accounts, right? And even then, right, when that was exposed, they were still covering up that there was another 2.5 million people, right, that had been robbed with a different form of Centrelink overpayment debts. Right, now that finally came out.
Yeah.
In the Ombudsman's report, I think it was 2023, August 2023, when he looked into, because I didn't stop.
Yeah.
Right, when I realised that they were covering up, they made still to this day, my main submission to Royal Commission, Robodebt, still to this day, my main submission has been made confidential. And I showed in that submission that these debts were illegal all along.
So
I kept going after everyone signed up on it, on the 400,000, and now it's been exposed. Nearly 3 million people have been robbed.
I think just quickly on that as a sub point, I think
Yes.
understanding of Robodebt in the general population is relatively low. I know that it was kind of not something. It's not something which was easy to engage with myself. But just to
some made it very, very simple by saying if you have had a Centrelink overpayment debt, you need to phone up and ask for a review now. They could have made it so simple.
Yeah.
But instead, I believe, right, that the term Robodebt was created in order to, hold back the fact that almost everybody that's had an overpayment debt from Centrelink has been robbed. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, and when you say robbed, they were.
I'm saying robbed. I'm saying robbed.
The people, just to clarify, the people had been paid Centrelink payments, and then they were asked to repay that, and then they did they actually make those repayments a lot of the time, or were they just being pressured?
Some people are still waiting for the money back on money they were forced to pay on debts that were illegal.
Yes.
Just to explain, right, when when Robodebt, right? We've all been, probably everyone that's looked into this has seen things about the algorithm.
Yes.
But the algorithm was only a very, very small part. The whole thing never could have worked, right? Because we've got a Gregorian calendar. Now, they were data matching, right? A single figure from HEO to Centrelink's 26 fortnightly forms. But the problem with that is we've got a Gregorian calendar, and 26 times by 14 is 364 days.
Yeah, one day short.
How many days in a year have we got?
365.
And 366 each year. Right, so it is impossible, right, that they could ever get an accurate match.
Yeah.
Right, by working it that way. Then there was one other factor. HEO only deals in actual money paid, right? So when your employer pays, right, that appears on your tax form. But if that employer hasn't paid you that money, then that doesn't go on your tax form for a year.
Yeah.
But Centrelink was getting people to estimate earnings on their forms, even if they hadn't received that money yet. So they were not just taking money from an algorithm. They were using the basis for the 26 fortnight, even if it was perfect. Right, the whole idea of 26 fortnights for estimated earns compared to actual earns was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Then in 2011, I found that there'd been a problem with the old system calculating what were working credits.
Yeah.
When people used to do work for the dole, they used to be granted a certain number of working credits, right, to offset for the fact that they'd done this work, right, for nothing.
Yeah.
Right, basically. But in 2011, I realised, because I was a carer at that time, and I was doing mutual obligations as well as being a carer, and I realised that Centrelink had recorded what should have been 1,000 working credits as zero. And when I've got some old certificates on, I've obviously got my diploma of accounting, which have the module accounts and information systems, but I've actually got a computer programming certificate, an old one.
Yeah.
And I realised that Centrelink's old system, right, that was the same age as when my programming certificate was, old system had actually been programmed for working credits with a number of fields, entry fields, that was inadequate.
Yes.
So when it only had 3 entry fields for 1,000, which has 4 digits, right? So 4 digits needs 4 entry fields.
Yeah.
Right, but it only had 3.
Yes.
So
Okay.
when it was reading those working credits, right, it was only seeing 000.
Yeah. Okay.
When it should have been seeing 1,000.
Yeah.
So people, when I looked at the average amount of the debt, the average amount of the Robodebt, I realised that the amount equated to the working credits of 1,000 plus also the allowable earnings, because people with a Centrelink debt could earn a certain amount of money and have to pay 50 cents of it back. So they could earn some money but get less. And the amount of the average debt, when I did the calculations, was the combination of the working credits and the allowable earnings.
Yeah.
So I don't believe there was a single case of a Centrelink overpayment debt that I could not have absolutely sunk into the ground. Further, I found that the estimates of the number of people that had committed suicide or died mysteriously was way outside what should have been normal. There was supposed to be only 300 people that were test cases, 300 vulnerable people that were test cases for getting a Robodebt. But when I looked at the number of deaths of people that had died within 1 year of receiving a Robodebt, the number far exceeded insurance percentages for what natural deaths would account for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking, this thing should have been looked at by the NACC, but it's now been exposed as being totally corrupt.
Yeah. So I think that you have had some wins in the Robodebt space, but you're also linking it to broader systemic issues with regard to government and tech companies and corporations squashing genuine debate and dialogue and accountability.
How about siphoning money out of the government?
So tell us your wins first. What is the win? You've had some wins because there is some good news here.
I actually took the government. I got a Robodebt myself.
Yeah.
For $5,700, and a few dollars.
And that's the kind of thing that could really send a person into spirals mentally, because you don't want to be issued a $6,000 debt out of the blue when you're already struggling.
Well, I got my Robodebt inquiry letter dated the day I was discharged from hospital.
No, that's brutal.
My leg amputated.
That's brutal.
The story was covered. If you Google my name, Tracey Hoolachan, Queensland amputee in Centrelink, you will see that I took them to tribunal and actually beat them in tribunal.
Yeah.
And I believe I was probably the first and maybe only person that was able to get the information into a public tribunal, because I went public.
Yes.
Into a public tribunal that the Robodebt program was not working on a number of levels. I mean, it was just absolutely terrible. This thing could not even issue an accurate receipt date, as you'll see from that Channel 9 online interview. Right? I actually made sure that went in there. Could not even issue an accurate receipt. So we're talking a terrible system.
Can I just say that I think that the average person listening may, just to play devil's advocate for a second, may look on and say, well, Australian people get such a high level of social security. The dole payment system is very generous on world standards. These sort of issues are, they largely sweep it under the carpet of these people should be happy with what they're getting. They shouldn't be complaining. Okay, sure, there's some mistakes that have been made, but they should be able to sort of, there's been a review, there's been an inquiry, the government's acknowledged some mistakes. They've paid it out. We should move on. However, there is human tragedies that you're mentioning here, like getting issued a $6,000 debt on the day that you came out of hospital is brutal. But also, there's the principles.
It's theft.
theft.
In 1943, it's blatant theft of health and welfare that's been going on.
Yeah.
Across 1943 to 1946, there was a National Welfare Fund change, and it was the forerunner. The National Welfare Fund was actually the forerunner to the 1947 Social Security Act.
Yeah.
And the National Welfare Fund actually increased everybody's taxation bracket, right, by 7.5%, right, to cover us for health and welfare. And I'm talking, we should be getting dental care, we should be getting a whole lot of things, but if you ask anybody that needs the help, like our aged and our disabled, you'll see that they are on a waiting list of it. Even if they've got off that waiting list, they're not receiving the care.
Yeah.
Now, the fact is, they were supposed to have a trust account, and this went to a referendum. Right, for them to get agreement on that, right, they had to set in place, right, what we had, right, they had to set it in place that we have, and we're happy with that 7.5% tax bracket adjustment for the provision of health and welfare.
So we're talking about mass taxation on a broad scale and a lack of accountability on a broad scale, which actually helps.
We're talking theft because they've added to that pool. This amount was supposed to go into a trust account, right? And in 1950, right, after they set up the trust account, right, and proved, right, because there was a surplus balance in that trust account, right, they shifted because there was such a huge amount between the amount of welfare and the amount of receipts coming in to cover that welfare. And this is just after the war, when people had, were coming back with, horrible disabilities and things.
Yeah.
Right? But they still had, money in that trust account. There were smokers then, there was asbestos, then, there were all sorts of things, but it still had this enormous surplus. That money, right, was then shifted from a trust account, right, and that trust account was one of the, like the financial environment that people voted for that referendum on, right, it was shifted from a trust account into consolidated revenue. Right, so that's money that should not have gone, right, to consolidated revenue, has just disappeared off the face of the earth because it will have been spent on anything, right? Then they added, despite us all paying, right, that extra 7.5% levy and proving, right, that it was financially viable to do it, right, they then, right, charged you for Medicare levy, charged you for smokers levies. We've even got levies on tomatoes and a whole range of other things.
Yeah.
Right, so they've been charging a whole heap of levies, right? The tomatoes not so, but the other two definitely. Right, they've been charging a whole heap of levies, calling it, a health levy, when our health should be 100% paid for by that 7.5% referendum-backed,
Yeah.
Tax adjustment. So when they don't supply that health and welfare, that's theft.
Yes.
There's no other word to describe it. When it can be proven that it was, profits, it was viable, financially viable, right? And they've then gone ahead after, right, proving it was financially viable, took it, to somewhere, the money to anyone's death, right? And then started charging for new levies and setting up future funds, and a whole range of other things, the money's gone and it's not gone on health.
So can we map this?
Nobody's getting it.
Can we map this onto on a global scale and compare Australia with the world? How well is Australia functioning as a democracy? As perhaps you could see us as a socialist state in some ways. We've got a lot of social security that is in place, which places like America don't have. How well are we operating compared to perhaps what people think about us?
Well, when you think about that 7.5% extra taxation, right? That isn't a socialist taxation, right? People have actually paid an extra 7.5%, right, for health and welfare.
Yeah.
If we were to use that 7.5%, right, and go out and get medical insurance, go out and get a whole range of employment insurances, because you can get, insurances to cover if you lose your job.
Yeah.
If we would have put that 7.5% into those things, we would have a better chance of being able to claim back, our health and welfare.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about a socialist. That 7.5% proves that it is a paid entitlement, and that is not a free handout from the government, right? So, so we've been robbed, right? There's no other word to use it. As far as us moving towards a socialist state, I don't really think that's going to happen, because most people are, quite wise to the fact we've got a surprisingly high amount of people that are small subcontractors in this country.
Yeah.
And as long as, it's an unbelievably high number, like over 90% of the businesses in Australia are small business. As long as we have that high percentage, there will always be pushback against this country becoming a socialist state.
Yeah.
So I can't see it ever happening.
When I say a socialist state, I'm seeing the high amount of taxes that we pay. That's a large amount of funds which the government has to work with, to deal with. There's a lot of
well, if we consider other countries like France has a very high rate, but the difference is, right, yes, our taxes are high, but they're high because we're getting nothing back for them.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell. Right, we should be getting health and welfare. We're not getting it. Let's be honest. Every 2 minutes they introduce co-payments and charge for more. Right, so our problem, right, our major problem is that we have too many cooks in Australia Parliament House.
Yeah.
Too many cooks there that are literally just stirring the pot instead of doing any actual work.
Yeah.
And that's our problem here. Right? And I'm already probably on a number of dartboards there, so I'm not scared of opening my mouth about it.
Yeah.
I've literally dotted my copybook, in Robodebt, but I'm not stopping.
I have a vision of what Australia can be like. I think you and I are fighting hard for the Australia that we have appreciated in the past, and the Australia that we sense is a genuine nation of good people with a lot of capacity for good systems and a lot of capacity to help the downtrodden and to give young people a vision for a better and better society. So that's what I think ultimately is definitely in my heart, and I think is what you're fighting for also.
Well, I've been a passionate advocate for the homeless.
Yeah.
If you Google my name and homelessness, you'll see I was accepted public, on to a Senate inquiry on homelessness, and I've been passionate about that for a number of years.
Yeah.
And as long as people can't buy their own house, even if it's a little house, like a tiny house, until the situation comes that they can afford to buy their own house and be able to put that house up themselves without blooming councils telling them they can't, right? As long as we have that situation going on, right, this country is going to go further and further down.
And that's where I see...
People don't have stable housing, right, they can't get stable jobs. They can't have families. I mean, we're talking about we're building a generation of kids that have their house in a backpack.
Yes.
Right? And nobody no woman that has a backpack is ever going to want to bring up a family.
Yeah, that's right.
And subject them to it.
And that's a big function I see for you, Tracey. You're opening up truth, which is exposing wastage. You're opening up files and discussion and dialogue, which is being shut down by these nudging and behavioural economic systems, these corporations. You're being someone who's opening up these topics, which are difficult for people to understand, but ultimately I see it as opening windows of opportunity and capacity for improvement in Australia, because wastage, fraud, and a lack of accountability is robbing our society of standards of living, which is what the current political discussion is all about. So that's, hooray to you, and that's why I'm cheering for your voice and for your advocacy. It can come across as negative, and it is. It's dark, it's disappointing, it's negative, and it requires truth, targeted objective statements of wrongdoing. So that's where it can be difficult for people to hear. But on the flip side, it's a opportunity for goodness to come out.
If you look at thank you very much for those comments there. They're what I've been aiming for, David.
Yes.
If you look at many of my submissions, like the homelessness one, you'll see I don't just put forward the problem, I put forward solutions.
Yes.
Right, and my carers, the carers submission, right, same again. I didn't just put forward the problem, I put forward the solutions to the problem.
Yeah.
But, I've got to say it, David, these people just do not care.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem. We need a lot of things happening there. The first thing that should happen, right, the first things that should happen is, number one, every person that does a public submission should be entitled, right, to have that, if it's a public inquiry and it's a public submission, they should be entitled to see that submission is published. These inquiries, right, that we're paying the costs on those inquiries, we're paying the travelling allowance, and accommodation for all those inquiries, and yet, right, they get to choose, right, what goes in what gets published and what doesn't. As long as that happens, all we are doing when they have them inquiries is paying for their promotional material.
Well, democracy is a very complex beast in this regard, because presumably an AI bot could generate a full 65-page submission, and that could be done 100 times over per day and flood the system to creating a bureaucratic tax payer funded bottomless sink of funds. So it's not easy to come to grips with, but what you're talking about is this pure democracy, this concept of people putting...
Constitutional.
Yeah, exactly.
What I'm talking about is constitutional. The powers, if if you read our Constitution, Section 51, right, all of the acts that our government has the power to make must be done with good order, by a good government.
Yes.
That's Section 51. Now, natural justice says, right, let the other side be heard.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And if we can't put in a public submission that's telling what the other side is saying, right, and it's being rejected, right, then we don't have democracy.
Exactly.
And we certainly don't have constitutional order. They should not be entitled to do that. I mean, I've got some wacky ideas on things. I think that, the rate of pay, right, for all of the politicians is a disgrace.
Yeah.
I mean, how do people, right, that are on, at ridiculously high salaries and ridiculously high allowances and, their sweeteners, how, do they be representatives of people in some of our poorer areas in this country?
Yes.
They can't be.
Yes.
So I think that what should happen, right, is that representatives get paid the same amount, right, as the average hourly rate of their constituents.
Yes.
And if that happened, they would always be motivated to raise the standard of living of everybody in their electorate.
Yeah.
Because it would then raise their pay packet.
Yeah. It's
You
not
know,
such a
they can't
wacky
get
idea.
around that.
It's not such a wacky idea. And for my part, people might think, well, there's no money to fund the government to read these submissions and publish them and make them available. But to me, it just makes the case so much stronger that we don't have time for so many of these woke agendas. Put them to the side and forefront true democracy, the true public, well-run order of government, as you quoted from the Constitution, receiving submissions and properly investigating these issues, and put the fringe issues to the side. We don't have money to waste on fringe issues like woke topics.
If, all of the minor parties, right, and the, and the independents, they can't possibly, with the resources they're given, compete on an equal footing in Parliament. They can't possibly.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have the manpower. Right? So they can't cover all of the, attendances at all of the committees.
Yes.
So how, if they're only getting one side of the story, right, in those inquiries, right, and they can't double check what comes out in that inquiry's report by seeing public submissions that contradict what's in those reports.
Yes.
Then, we don't have democracy.
Yeah.
Or even a chance of getting a democracy and an equal voice from minority parties and independents. They just don't have the manpower.
Yeah.
So that would be a major step. Having this all submissions public, because these are this gives the other opinion.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would be designing those submissions so that right you can tick a box, and it's so simple. You can tick a box for and tick a box against.
Yeah.
Right? And then, if somebody wants to, like an independent wants to quickly check, right, they can, go to all the people that have for submissions or against submissions and get an alternative opinion.
I think
at the moment, nothing.
What you and I are doing is putting a vote forward for a fundamental reform of democracy. Put some money towards fundamentally reforming democracy so that it's working at a grassroots level, at a fundamental level, and that's going to, in due course, return a lot of money back to our society in a pure way. Now, I want to jump to something which is really interesting from your online content, Tracey. I came to see how you were using AI. I wanted to ask you, what's it been like for you having conversations with AI engines and pitting them against each other? That's been brilliant. I think it's going to really engage with people who are in this space.
Very strongly. I did that in the Royal Commission New Zealand submission.
Yes.
And I used both AI, right, to get their opinions on things.
Yes.
Again, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes the AI if you read that Royal Commission New Zealand submission, you'll see that sometimes they took me off on another direction. And I've been very fair in the assessment, of the AI.
Yeah.
And I am finding that it all gets back down to the programmer, and there is still a lot of bias. Twitter's gone back to as bad as it was before.
Yeah.
Right? It made, it branched out, and actually, I'm finding that I'm getting more interactions on Facebook now.
Yeah.
From my, you'll notice I've been doing more reels lately and short snippets, because I've pretty much done all the research I can do on COVID. So, I mean, what do you do? I've exposed that it was a total fraud.
Yeah.
I can show that they had to know that very early in January, right? So I can show that who has doctored their situation reports. I've got, I've put forward everything. There's very little as an observer that I can continue on with. Now it's down to the science of the damages.
Yeah.
But, that's, I'm not, I taught myself diagnostic medicine, believe it or not, over a week.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've got an unusual skill set.
Yeah, no
I've
kidding.
Got, 143 IQ, right, which is pretty high.
Yes.
And I've also got higher superior advanced memory genes. So I remember a lot of things, and I make weird connections.
Well, I love the way you're harnessing your intellectual abilities and status there. I want to actually read now for the listeners.
Sometimes that gets in my way.
I can believe.
No, and I'll say that because, I'm a person of faith.
Yes.
I might swear a lot, but I am a person of deep faith. And I'll never get rid of that. I mean, I worked in housing and transport for years, right, with truck drivers. So I'm sorry that's the language of the environment.
No, that's all right.
But I am a person of faith, and and it gets in my way because, and you'll know this yourself as a Christian.
Yeah.
We get led places other people don't. We
Yeah.
get feelings that other people don't, because we're attuned to the angels around us, God's angels around us. And, we're tuned in more than anybody else. And, I get very, very strong pushes, right?
Yep.
And You know, and I get little hints and a lot of little things,
Well,
you know, that tell me, and my brain, you know, sometimes I'll see things, you know, that, you know, I've had that instinct from God from.
Yeah.
And I'll sometimes see that, right? But then, you know, I've got, you know, my brain and the rest of it going on.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether those, you know, those things have come from God or whether they, you know, come from, you know, my other talents. But saying that, God made me as I am.
Well,
right.
for my part, the world is you know, the world of science is often seen as concrete, cut and dry. This is a fact, this is not a fact. But the world of the inner mind, the world of feelings, the world of emotions, the world of you know, oral history as remembered, the world of identity and relationships, of hopes and dreams, the world of children, which we can only sort of imagine. These are all mysterious realms, the realm of faith. So if we can open ourselves up and start to step into that realm, those realms, and harness the imagination, harness the experiences, and start to draw on these more mysterious realms, I think we can gain assurance, we can gain hope, we can gain vision, rather than you know, dismissing it as hokey pokey, hocus pocus. It's actually a world which a lot of us get a lot of security and stability from. So I'm right with you. I think God is there. God is real. He certainly provides me and believers across the globe with a sense of security, hope, and vision. So I'm right with you there. But on the topic of AI engines, I actually have a screen grab from. I want to read it out because it's really fascinating for people to get a sense of how you are working. Because this is I thought, wow, Tracey's got.
Experiment. You won't believe it. I do a number of experiments every day.
Yeah. So this is one of your experiments.
And part of my life.
This is what you said. You've put this on one of your submissions. Your interaction. You said, "Good morning." And a quick one. I'll declare I have already asked the same question to Google AI and will be using your answer in my Royal Commission submission to be lodged today. Question. Is capital N nudge a form of persuasive marketing? And this is the response. Good morning. Yes, nudge is a form of persuasive marketing. It involves subtly guiding consumer behavior through indirect suggestions or positive reinforcement, often leveraging behavioral economics to influence decisions without restricting choices. Examples include default options as strategic placement of products to encourage specific actions. Best of luck with your Royal Commission submission. Thank you, Grok, you said. You arrived at the same answer. Bye for now. You're welcome, says Grok. Glad I could help. Best of luck with your submission and bye for now.
Yep.
Fascinating.
Now, the irony is, right, covertly or overtly, it was still a nudge. And that obviously unwound totally informed consent.
Yep.
In order for informed consent to be, you know, correctly given and correctly received, right, they cannot have nudged anything, but they obviously did.
So what's the difference between a nudge in that sense and just a piece of information or a book or an advertisement? Because there's advertising, there's marketing. These are all factors which we take on board in our decision-making process. But you're saying the nudge is coercive or illegal or criminal.
I'm saying it's coercive and I'm saying it's illegal. The manner in which, if you look at whose situation report, number 1, right, you will see that it refers to 44 COVID-19 cases, and that we all thought was the start of COVID. You know, from, I think it's the 31st of December is in the thing. But those 44 cases, of them, by the time that report was printed, 3 of them had already been discounted.
Yes.
So there was really only 41 cases, right? But you never saw that. You never saw that because then people would start to ask, was there a problem with the initial testing? And we now know that there was a problem.
So is it wrong mainly on the basis of it being a partial truth, an untruth? Or is it wrong because the government is doing it? Or is it wrong because it's being reinforced in so many ways? What is it that makes that information wrong? Because it was partially true at least.
It was partially true, right? But it was coercively written. And that means that all of the situation reports were coercive marketing. And that means that, that there was a lot of things in situation report one that was wrong. You never heard, right, that, who would have thought that by situation report by situation report on the 9th of January that we never saw because, it's put off as an aside in that Who situation report that 973 close contacts of those initial 44 had been tested and not one single person had COVID-19.
Yeah.
Right, so we're not talking about persuasive marketing. These reports were issued particularly, right, to in fraud. Right, it could not possibly be deemed any other way. By situation report 3, there were no situation reports, and I proved that there were no situation reports issued from the 25th of January to the 27th of January. They were added at a later time, and but them being added, right? And if we had to assume that at that time, right, which we're told now, the data was on the same date as the situation report. If we had to assume that, then Bloomberg, right, Bloomberg RAG was publishing deaths that hadn't even occurred yet.
Yeah.
So these reports were, total fraud.
Yeah.
I watched towards the end of February. I've been following the figures, right, on the number of people in China by the province. Right? I really got into it, David.
Yeah.
Right? And I've been, looking at the facts. There was hardly any, nearly all the cases of this reported COVID-19 were inside the Hubei province by whose own situation report. But as it got closer to the end of February, all of a sudden we had this huge, enormous speed up, right? And it that took it so that 96%, right? But it'd been nearly 99% were inside Hubei until a few days, few situation reports before. And, that was just an impossible jump.
Yes.
A 4% jump was just ridiculous. But even allowing for that, 96% was still in the province, right, inside the province that was locked down.
Yes.
So how, if 96% of people were still in that province in China, right, so it obviously didn't spread in China.
Yes.
How did it get to England, to, all the other countries? Right? It couldn't have happened. It could not have happened.
Yeah.
So we'll talk. There were other factors.
So, I've got a quote here. I've got a quote here. Your section conclusion that you put in one of your submissions. You said behavioural insight economics behavioral economics, or nudge, is persuasive marketing and not psychology theory, and
Yes.
as such should have no place in health systems of countries that have public health systems. Nudge in health is intended to be coercive and therefore undermines that uncoerced free will consent that was given to medically treat. Victims of use of the nudge tool were medical practitioners and patients alike. I thought that just nails it, because I'm coming from a purist perspective where I've taught English in high schools, and I think to myself, okay, the capacity to use persuasive language is important and valuable. It's at the cornerstone of unbridled and flourishing democracy. So in what sense is nudging wrong? It's that interface where a government, which has obligations, legal obligations, ethical guidelines, and it ought to be operating in a way which is accountable and not stepping over that line where they are providing services on the through taxpayer funds without being. They can't operate like a corporation or a business or an individual that's trying to convince or coerce. That's misappropriation of funds.
Exactly.
So it's that line where nudge is inappropriate. It becomes coercive, and it's in the health sector. It's where we've got principles such as bodily autonomy, such as informed consent. Medical practitioners have guidelines, and nudge has no place. And it's this wholesale acceptance of nudge theory, of nudge systems through the COVID era, that it's now become a staple. It's like a foundation of psychology, that nudge is okay. It's welcome. It's part of our democracy.
It's not psychology. It's not psychology, because they don't have any psychology qualifications.
Yeah. You're right.
The writers of nudge have no, so it's not psychology. In fact, the nudge itself, when I looked into it, was was a variation on Stanley Milgram's experiment, and I came across, and I've just put it in the COVID-19 conspiracy Facebook group.
Yep.
I've just come across a old psychology experiment that Harvard did along the same lines, where they just kept, effectively nudging up worse and worse tactics of people they had locked down.
Yes.
And they knew exactly what they were doing. It was Stanley Milgram's experiment, right, ramping up the measures.
Yep.
And it was also a lot of the asides were very much in my submission, RCP2, Royal Commission Part 2. A lot of the measures were hypnosis, self-hypnosis techniques. We were pumped with things like mindfulness sessions, right, that induce that state. We had the politicians, all parroting the same message.
Yeah.
All of these things, I actually went through step by step in RCP2 and put the measures side by side of self-hypnosis and the measures we got in COVID.
Yes.
They were exactly the same. And we were tossed frequently between a choice of two things. Which mask, which vaccine, which social distancing steps. And the truth is, we should have been asking which politicians were telling us the truth.
Yeah.
And there were very few.
Now,
there were very, very few.
I want to springboard into a little bit of commentary with regard to the stock market, because you have some insights there also.
Yeah.
But as a segue, I want to read another quote. You said, most people that use social media know about the Twitter files now. Few will know that pharmaceutical companies and WHO have been supporting bot troll farms to nudge, number 1, inoculation uptake, 2, targeted attacks on individuals that oppose COVID-19 inoculations, 3, defaming individuals making qualified comments as dangerous and insane. 3. Mask use without any science. 4. Vaccine passports and digital identities and happy lockdown individuals. And then you've got a link to a submission, and I did warning government that the censorships were COVID-19 were targeted attempts to undermine our democratic elections. And moreover, you said elsewhere, in COVID-19, nudges were actively pushing telehealth, online pharmacies, and the use of AI in health. And so when you realize that this nudge is a mass-funded operation, and that funding comes from particular sources who have a bottom line outlook, you can see that nudging is very, very dark and manipulative on a government and corporate level. And it has indications for the stock market and what people are supporting and buying and benefiting from.
Yep, exactly. And I could see, right, a lot of people don't know, right, mid-December 2019, Ted Ross came out with he would do predictions on flu seasons. He came out with a prediction that said basically said that it was going to be a nothing new flu season right, in 2020.
Yeah.
I'll just say this before I don't have investment qualifications,
Yep.
so I cannot advise anybody on investment.
Yep.
But for my own purposes, right, I was following, right, in the time up to that period, right, I was following a movement that was going between Bitcoin, gold, and big pharma stock.
Yeah.
So I was looking at all of these things, right, and there was groups of people that were moving between the three of these, commodities, and were, nudging, right, people online, which are your mums and dads investors,
Yeah.
right, that are self-managing their money, and they were, running between these three, right, and pumping up popularity, and I'm betting my bottom dollar they were all insider trading.
Yes.
Right, now, I found inside Centrelink as part of my Robodebt, right, and I was watching all this happen. Right, I found when I looked into, was investigating Robodebt, I found that in Centrelink there were suspension account. There was at least one suspension account set up, right, that money was going into, right, that was entitled money that I should have received myself, right, and money went into this area, right, that Centrelink refers to as parking, your money's been parked.
Yeah.
Right, but the money was going into this area despite the fact you were, I was entitled to receive this amount.
Yeah.
And Centrelink was telling AGL they had paid the money out on that day.
Ah.
Right? Yes. So, yes. So Centrelink had been telling that they'd been, paying the money to customers on that day.
Yeah.
But the reality was I did not get that money for 6 weeks, right, after the date they advised AGL had received the money.
Gee.
And across that 6 weeks, it had passed a quarterly end.
Oh,
so
gee.
That means they had to have been running a suspense account where the money had gone into that suspense account, had disappeared off the face of the earth, right, because otherwise there would have been a balance sat in that suspense account too.
Oh, gee. And I don't know what's worse, if they're negligent of that or completely masterminded it.
We've had, if you have a look, right, that money was in there for a period that could have been used for term deposits.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. And we've had numerous cases, right, that have been just dribbling through of things like I mean, the Australia. Did you know that people in the weather section had been were in the media for Bitcoin mining? Do you remember that case came out?
The people in the what section?
I think they were in weather.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is all
okay.
tagged to Signals directory, and they're all tagged into that section. Do you know they were caught out Bitcoin mining using the public computers?
Oh, gee. Yeah, you mentioned that in somewhere. I thought, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane what's been going on there. I mean, a high part, right, of, one of the things that probably, another thing I'd be adding to that list of published submissions would be, I've been pushing for a number of years that the number of people on the governance committees, right, for Australia Parliament House, that they need far more public, far more members of the public on them governance committees. I think if there was more people,
Yeah.
that were, that were able to represent the public, instead of this bunch that are just generational, generational, and picked by the government they're supposed to be overseeing, right, to hold them positions. If we had more people on those, on those committees, I think this country would be going leaps and bounds.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think you are a reservoir of hope and positivity because of the insight that you have, Tracey. Honestly, I think people talk about the phrase "you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Well, for some,
you free.
yeah, that's a beautiful reality. On the flip side, when you point out the truth and you're guilty, it's not good news for them. But we need the truth to be pointed out and for people to garner a sense of hope and optimism, because the reality is, as Patrick Bet-David says, the future looks bright when you've got a sense of, well, for me, God taking care of us, of our society being found, having a foundation of goodness, faith, hope, love, logic, family values, togetherness, accountability, and intergenerational input into what's best. There's so much hope. There's so much potential and goodness standing before us, ready for us to step into.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate your insights, Tracey, so much. I want to give you a chance to give some concluding comments and then to let people know how they can engage with you, either support you or read your work or to watch your forthcoming activism. So there you go. Well, how would you like to summarize?
The best place is, and I don't accept any money at all.
Yep.
I never have, and I never will. I don't accept any money for my research. That's the first thing I'll say straight up front. I've never profited in any way from any of the work on health and research. I always do. That's like my arms.
Yes.
Paying my arms.
Yes.
I never accept any money. I always self-fund, but they can have a look at my blog page, and I have given you the.
Yes, I'll put it in the
blogger
in the show notes.
And also the COVID-19 controversy, not conspiracy group.
Yes, that's open to the public. You welcome people across the board in that group.
Both open to the public, and I particularly I've left. I am on Twitter too, but I've been censored. I have 2 accounts that have been suspended there. Ironically,
Democracy Demon.
Yeah,
quite a name you have.
I've had 2 counts. Well, actually, that was a rock and roll band, David. So.
Oh, I didn't pick that up.
Yes, Democracy Demon was actually a rock and roll band, but it was more a case of me being a demon to get it back on track.
Yes, yes.
Rather than it being, a bad demon.
No, yeah, I think that's clear.
But yes, it was a rock and roll band. And I liked the name. I thought it was catchy, so
Nice.
that's how I ended up with it. They can contact me there. I've particularly left, and I've done this consciously. I ask that I've left it open so that people that have a Centrelink debt can contact me, but I'm very clear that I do not want any of your identifying materials or anything, your private details, so if you're sending me stuff that you want me to look at, I want you to mark out, any names or anything.
Yeah. Do you identify?
So that I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And you can give me just a general inquiries and stuff like that. And I'm happy to help anybody at all with a Centrelink problem online and NDIS, obviously. I'm happy to help with any inquiries in my private, messages. And if when I get a certain number together, then I know that there's a problem in a certain area.
Yeah, got you.
That isn't being looked at. And that's how I've done it for a number of years now. And it seems to be working for me. So you're very honoured. This is only the second, and this is the first time I've done you'll notice I tried to dodge other ones in the past.
Yeah.
I think you got one of them. But I don't